So much to talk about on a Monday, including with all the talent Dan Lanning is adding right now. Just how much is it exactly? Is it enough? Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. Please continue to like, comment, subscribe wherever you go, which today is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs, helping you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. That's LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So we start with a mailbag question here on a Monday. And speaking of the defense, I'll talk about the new safeties coach tomorrow. I have been traveling today. You may notice here on YouTube, I'm not in my usual setup. I am my parents for a few days up in the greater Seattle area. So haven't had a chance to look into him yet, but I will. Just in case any of you ask a question, like my man GWG5640 asks, okay, I have to ask this question. Well, if you must, then I shall allow it. You or Max indicated back in spring or early part of the season that the only way this team would be able to compete on a national stage is with a quote-unquote defense. I don't know why you have quotation marks there, but okay. That, paraphrasing, does what a Georgia defense does. So is this coaching staff getting people from SEC-type school states? I'm not getting the feeling he is getting those type of players in this, quote, Dan Lanning vision of a high caliber defense during this signing period. Imply the defense may not be ready next season to where it should be to compete for a national title. So I've been meaning to get this question for this was pre-Jordan Birch edition, but still I feel like this is an important question to go over because Oregon has not been adding a few players in the in the 2023 recruiting and transfer cycle. The defensive line, they've been a lot of them. I mean, a high volume of defensive linemen. And the question is whether or not it'll be enough and whether or not the defense will be ready. And my expectations for the defense certainly have gone up since the roster rework has, started to continue to come about, particularly on the defensive line. I still have to see the results on the field to fully believe it. I am optimistic, but still I am not sold. And here's why. Addition of Jordan Birch is pretty darn important, right? It is quite huge to help get the defense to where it is because you add him with Brandon Dorlus and Popo Amavai's back and Casey Rogers and Sam Taimani back in there. Like you have a lot of high caliber players, but all the new players, 28 total from the high school ranks and 9 or 10 from the transfer portal, and so many on the defensive line. Everyone coming from the high school ranks, true freshman this year, a true freshman. That includes, by the way, Mateo Uiagalelei, who, if he is an instant impact source, I definitely need to explore here on the show. Having him at one end, Birch at the other, Dorlus in the middle with either Popo or K, that's defensive line I feel much better about than the one that Oregon put on the field for 2022. But you add a lot of talent. We have seen coaches across the country like Lincoln Riley, like Kalen DeBoer a little bit up at Washington, utilize the portal, add key players where they need to, and then completely reshape a team either in general, as they did at USC, where they still, scored and gave up a lot of points, but they were much more competitive, or, DeBoer at Washington just completely flipped that offense on his head way for the Huskies. Like, that was a remarkable 1-year turnaround. Defense is different because you look at what those coaches did in the portal and say, well, they completely flipped the offenses around and they were efficient and they were effective and they were all this sort of stuff. That's all true. 100%. They brought in new quarterbacks and they brought in new play callers. Defensively, one guy cannot carry the defense. We saw that in 2021. Kayvon, as dominant of a defensive player, as impactful as a defensive player as Oregon has, I think the only guy comparable, Haloti Ngata. Those are probably, on the defensive line, the 2 best players the Ducks have ever had. And Mateo can accomplish, but he certainly got a lot of hype. I'm stoked to have him. But expecting an entire to turn around in a year, which this Oregon defense in some ways does need to do, it's asking a lot. And I think what be a measure of is how close was the defense a year ago? Were they missing things schematically? Were they missing a lot of personnel, or were they just missing a pass rush? You can reasonably make the argument that they were just missing a pass rush. Able to bring that with Mateo and Birch and Mace Funa back and Dorless playing primarily on the interior to get pressure from up the middle. It can bring that element. Maybe that is all they were missing. But I still expect this defense in 2024. Improved in 2023? Yeah, I think that even more so than when this question originally came in. And I'm sorry for not getting to it sooner. There's just been so much news. And any of you who have sent in a question, by the way, I promise I've got it written down. I'm not skipping over it, not forgetting. Just a matter of, what the news of the day is. I can't reasonably expect that Oregon's defense is suddenly going to be dominant in 2023. There's so many moving parts. I think we should expect improvement. But in 2024, I'm going to expect borderline dominance, or else it'll be a disappointment. And if they don't improve in 2023, that will be a disappointment. But adding these guys, adding these body types, which I'll get to in a sec, is a step in the right direction. Everything has to come together for the defense. It doesn't just happen overnight. The last great Oregon defense, 2000, you had Thibodeau as a true freshman, monster. You had an elite secondary. I mean, those guys were really good. Diamondor Lenore, starting corner on a playoff team. Javon Holland starts on a playoff team. Jerome McKinley plays on a playoff team. Mikael Wright, studly true freshman. Like, they had a bunch of dudes. But it didn't happen in one season because Javon Holland wasn't a first-year player. Diamondor, first-year player. Kayvon Thibodeau was. But you need the right blend of experience and talent. And I think Oregon's starting to build the talent, but I question if the experience is going to be there. Maybe with the transfers, it will be. But that's still the question in my mind. Can you have that unit playing at a really high level with a lot of new faces there, including in at all 3 levels? I mean, the defense is going to be almost entirely reworked, and we still don't know what's going to happen with the safeties. I want to answer the last part of his question. Are they getting the right sorts of body types from the right sorts of states? Because that is really, really important. It is a crucial part. You got to have the Jimmies and Joes in addition to the X's and O's. And Dan Lanning is not looking for those Jimmies and Joes using LinkedIn Jobs. If you are a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. You can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs resume data by using insights from your job post, company, and their 875 million, yeah, that's a lot of people, member profiles to put your posts in front of the most candidates. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com on college to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The short answer to the question of are they adding the right sorts of body types? Are they adding the right sort of guys from the right sorts of states to build an SEC caliber defense is yes, they are. When you look at their recruiting class, Mikael Gardner coming from Arizona, John Bowens coming from the state of Texas. Those are the sorts of states that you want to see. I'm intrigued by Tavita Pamee. Maybe he won't play, but he's just a huge 6'3", 315 from the state of Utah. But you look at the other guys that they're bringing in. They're coming from states that SEC schools are going to. It's not the exact same because you've got, some Colorados. You have a more California heavy recruiting class than a typical SEC program for sure. But I think when you look at the emphasis that Dan Lanning and his staff are putting on the defensive line, it tells you what they think Oregon was missing to get to that level. And there have been guys who have come in the past who have got similar measurables to the defensive lineman that Oregon's got on the roster right now or has been recruiting over the years. It's not as if Mario was a slouch in recruiting, as we all know. But I have the instinct to trust Dan Lanning, to trust Tosh Lupoy, to trust his defensive staff, that they aren't just looking for someone who has the size, but is looking for someone who has the twitch, that it factor that they are looking for. Because I don't think they would be overhauling the roster after a 10-win season like this and have that sort of mindset if they didn't think this is what we're trying to get to, this is the standard. And these guys are the sorts of players brought in the past that they have right now. They are not cutting it the way that we need them to or will need them to in the future. I think getting Mateo is huge. Kayvon Thibodeau was such a landmark landing for the Ducks. Number one overall player in the 29, lived up to the billing in literally every single way. I mean, gosh, that guy was good and is really good in the NFL, which I love to see. But hashtag talk about Herbert and Brandon Staley another time. Man, fuming. I was fuming, and I am on tomorrow's show. But you look at states like Texas, like Arizona, like California. Those are recruiting hotbeds that Oregon can get into, should be getting into, and is getting into. And I think that you won't see a lot of these true freshmen make an impact. See guys like Ashton Porter play sooner rather than later. John Garcia talked about how he's got one of the higher floors on the defensive line in this recruiting class. You might see Mateo play early, maybe a Blake Purchase as well, who Colorado went after very hard as National Signing Day came around in December. So I think the potential, whether or not it'll be realized, time will tell. I mean, guys have had a lot of potential coming from the high school ranks before, but I think going after that many players at one position group tells you that this staff is starting to see the caliber of recruit that they need and are able to attract to the program. So I hope that answers your question. I think the defense has the potential to be much better. There are still questions. I don't know who's playing safety right now. Evan Williams, there's one, but they've got three safeties in that 4-2-5 defense. I don't know. I don't know. Definitely something we'll continue to follow here in the offseason. Okay. I've been waiting to do this segment for a while too. Just so much news. What a glorious offseason. Do I wish it was shorter? Yeah, I do. I could go for an Oregon game in like 2 months against another team rather than 7.5, but on the gate, count down the days. Yikes. And get through it all together. That is what my job is here. And I love doing it. And I appreciate Armick. I was not going to ever, nor shall I in this moment, shortchange Cam McCormick because things can we say about him? He's a warrior. He is a Duck through and through. He's a great person. His mom, by the way, she's his biggest fan. She's a huge Duck fan. Cam McCormick, who saved the Utah game, who made a huge catch at Ohio State. Those two moments, integral to two of the biggest wins that we've enjoyed as Duck fans in the last two college football seasons. All he ever did was fight to play for the Ducks. That's all he wanted. And that's all he did. Injury after injury, rehab after rehab, year after year, coach after coach. And he's transferred away. He's going down to join Mario Cristobal at Miami. Man, I wish the best for that guy. You can't say anything about Cam McCormick before you mention the fact that he gave Oregon everything he had. He's just a warrior. That's what he is. He's a good football player, and he loves to play. And he represents many of the things that are great about college football. And quite frankly, he represents the best of the transfer portal, because that's not a guy who never saw the field and we just never saw his potential. It's not a guy who didn't deliver on the promise of his recruiting hype or anything like that. No, that's a guy who had a good career, who played, but could play more at another place and is going to find an opportunity to do that. But he's not leaving here without having gotten the opportunity to play, seen the field, made impact plays, had touchdown against Washington State, that comeback win up in Pullman this year. He made a lot of really, really good plays, and I am sad to see him go, but I totally understand it, because he probably can go to a tight end room where he's the clear number 2. He might have been that coming into this year. I think it leaves the depth chart in an interesting place. And my guy Balin Strand asked about that. Hey, man, here's a question for the show. How much do you think Cam McCormick transferring out will affect the program? Program. It's with an O, not an A. Just correcting you there. Just a little bit. Just details. You know, I'm very detail obsessed. Anyway, Cam McCormick, obviously, he was marred with this year. I agree, particularly in blocking. And now I think we're down to just 3 tight ends. Do you think this opens the door for a tight end transfer, if there is one out there? Or do you think this staff will roll with who they have? And if they don't pick one up, how do you think this changes the play calling? I am intrigued by this transfer, because though I understand him, you know, after 7 years, not being the number 1 tight end, maybe wanting to go somewhere else. Does he have the potential to do that? I don't know what Miami's roster looks like in the tight end rooms. Maybe he does have the opportunity to see the field more than he would have at Oregon this year. But with Maliki Matavao transferring out, he might have been the number 2 going into next year. I've been more impressed with him than Patrick Herbert, who I think is solid. But Cam McCormick transferring out leaves Oregon's tight end room with 2 guys right now. Two. Like the count from Sesame Street. 1 tight end. 2 tight end. I won't ever do that again till next week. I just wonder if this wasn't a situation where the staff feels like they are in a good position for one of 2 things to take place. Make Cam transferring out of the tight end room, in addition to Matavao, a bit more logical. And 2 things are, after I tell you about my friends at Bet Online, your number 1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to college bowl season to basketball and the World Cup. They've had it all at betonline.net. They still have it all. NFL playoffs, if that tickles you, or whatever you want. We've got it all. If you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline. You already know. It's where the game starts. The two thoughts on McCormick transferring out, and I have no insight as to who drove the decision. If it was the coach, you might be better served elsewhere because we, might not be able to get you the ball even as much as you saw this year as the number 3 tight end. Or if Cam wanted to leave, I don't know. Here's what I do know: that if he's not there, one of two things, maybe even both, you never know, is very much in play. Kenyon Sadiq coming in as a true freshman, they might be ready to go on day one. Worthy of note, in 2021, Terrence Ferguson, Maliki Mataval were Oregon's top 2 tight ends as true freshmen. Cam McCormick in the mix as well. But they were ready to play right away. I think that's one thing potentially. Number 2, remember Nicholas Harbor, who I would love to see play edge, but apparently end because he wants to stay thin and run track. If McCormick is not in the room, the position group, that opens up a slot because we saw 4 tight ends play this year. Significant with the 14J package, but just rotating guys in and out, right? Even disregarding the package where you put 4 of them on the field at the same time, 3 guys consistently played in a game, right? Herbert kind of played the least of the 3, but we saw T. Ferg, the number 1, obviously. He will be again. We saw Mataval. We saw them in critical situations. We saw him making catches. We saw him making big blocks. I just wonder. I wonder if the staff didn't look at this situation and say, we feel like we're in a good place with he wants to play tight end. And Cam, if we are able to get him, he'd probably surpass you on the depth chart because Cam is a good football player. He's rock solid. He will do anything that is asked of him. But Harbor is a more dynamic athlete, so they might want to work him a little bit more. Those are the two things that I wonder there. Those are the two things I wonder. And on the flip side of the coin, I don't know what sort of transfer tight end you could really add with the very real circumstance of he would be the number 2 at best, but number 3 most likely with Herbert already in there. A true freshman like Kenyon Sadiq will take that role. I think that's the most likely thing, is the staff feels that Kenyon Sadiq will be ready as a true freshman. I think that's the most likely here. But I'm staying on Nicholas Harbor watch after I watch it, because that was the other thing. I was like, wait, so another opening in the tight end room. We had 4 who played a lot this year, and right now we're at 2. We got 1 coming in. Does that mean we're adding something to watch? The last part. How do you think that changes the play calling? It depends on who they add. I mean, you got to see who they add. Use tight ends with Will Stein as the OC, whether or not they stick with that 14J package, or if that becomes a thing in the past. I don't know. I mean, I'd be really effective in short yardage in the goal line this year. Ran it, one time too many against the Beavs down in the red zone, but I think that's intriguing. So last thing I got to talk about today, and I mean, I don't understand this. I don't understand this at all. I mean, in any way, shape, or form. On Thursday, I watched the Oregon men's basketball team get embarrassed. Arizona State. They were run off their home floor. It was a terrible showing. It was embarrassing. It was awful. I then watched them turn around 2 days later on the same court with the same team, and they ended up beating Arizona, number 9 team in the country, by like 19, 20 points. I don't know who first came up with this phrase, but it's really appropriate right now. Riddle me that, Batman. I don't know what I'm supposed to think. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know how that team can have a ceiling that's an 8.5 out of 10 and a floor that is a 1. How can you look like one of the worst teams in the Pac-12 and one of the best on any given night? It makes no sense. Women's basketball also got screwed out of a game winner because of a clock issue and then lost to Washington State in overtime. So that was unfortunate. But Kelly Graves doing a heck of a job this season. I think the women are going to be fine, even though they've been pretty shorthanded, very shorthanded. But Dana Altman's team, it's puzzling. It's puzzling. It's also confusing. It's frustrating too. What the team can do. And then you see what they do sometimes. And you're just going, I don't know. I can't make any sense of it. But I hope one day we look back and say, oh, it was the moment they turned the corner in the season. They went on a 12-3 spurt and they made the tournament. I don't know. We're just, I'm going to keep watching. I'm going to wait and see because Dana's had some magic before, but Jermaine Kuznar looked really good. That could help. All right. I'm done blabbing for the day. I'll be back tomorrow, as always. Appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.